Hi final salary people, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Dominic James Murray, CEO and independent financial advisor here at Cameron James. So today we're going to be discussing final salary pension transfer deficits and whether or not your money is at risk. So first of all, to start off with, what is a deficit? So as you will all know, a deficit is when there is more liabilities than there are assets in order to achieve something which has been promised. So why do we have this situation happening with final salary schemes? Well, in fairness to them, it's because they gave you a great deal. They promised to look after you from cradle to grave, from you starting to join that company. This kind of worked for them in the olden days. People worked for 10, 20, 30 years in the same company, and they were rewarded for their loyalty by a final salary or defined benefit pension scheme. Now these are almost a thing of the past. Currently speaking, only 10% of final salary schemes are still open to new contributions, with the majority now closed to any new members. So this is my computer beeping. I'm just gonna have to turn that off. Thank you. So 10% are still open, and the remainder have now been closed. So why do DB schemes have deficits? Well, when they started off doing the calculations for you, they effectively put a lot of indexation and revaluation factors into the pension to ensure that on an ongoing basis, over the course of time, your money and purchasing value of your pension will remain correct. Say for example, if they offer you £25,000 per annum, but it was £25,000 fixed for the rest of your life, that's good, but in 20 years' time, £25,000 is not worth £25,000. It would probably be somewhere around £10,000 to £15,000 in today's terms of value. So what they're doing is they're index linking and inflation proofing your pension. Now, how much inflation proofing they give and how much they give on top of that is dependent on the existing scheme, or your specific scheme, I should say. So the other problems we've got with this are people are living much longer. When they set up your scheme, they expected you to live to maybe 70, 75, 80, early 80s. Now life expectancy is well into the mid 80s, and a lot of people are living into their 90s or even their hundreds. The percentage of the population reaching over 100 is getting more and more each year. So effectively, what this is doing is it's placing huge pressure on the final salary schemes because they don't have the right amount of assets in order to pay off the liabilities of the final salary scheme. To give you some figures, and I'm quoting off the top of my head here, so you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, in 2021, the pensions regulator came out to say that the UK deficit has now risen from it's 1.7 billion is the assets, and they have 1.9 billion in terms of liabilities. So that's a 200 billion deficit in 2021 from UK DB schemes. The most worrying part of this is up by around 40 billion compared to 2020. So from 2020 to 2021, there's an extra 40 billion deficit of UK final salary schemes of the liabilities which they are going to be paying to you in retirement. So a lot of my clients say to me, well, hang on, Dominic, what does this mean? Is my UK pension pot safe, or am I at risk of something happening? So it's very important to state, and the FCA is very hot on this. This is the reason why you have the Pension Protection Fund, the PPF, based in the UK, who will pay 90% or 100% of your promised pension or annuity or pension scheme after your normal retirement age. So there is protection in place. And actually, the TPR, to give them their due, have done some really, really good work. If you look at what happened to BHS, that hit the headlines. We all know what he was up to in Monaco. Wasn't necessarily paying the pension scheme. What ended up happening? TPR went in and were like, we're not having this. Mr. Green, you need to pay these fees and you need to put back money to the pension scheme. Also the same with Tata. They had to go into Tata and they helped when there was issues there. So there is protection. The PPF Protection Fund is there to protect in case your scheme becomes insolvent. How is the PPF paid for? By levies. So each UK DB scheme has to pay a fixed levy based on the number of members they have and the size of their scheme. Obviously, the bigger the scheme, the bigger the levy they pay. There's also a second levy, which is called a risk-rated levy. Some schemes pay zero risk-rated levy because they want to have 100% of assets funded in the scheme. Others have to pay a very large risk premium because maybe they have 60, 70 or 80% liabilities or assets to match their future liabilities. So it's a really important topic for clients to understand. And I don't want people to get the wrong idea from this video and say, oh my God, I need to transfer out of my pension straight away because Dominic said there's £40 billion worth of deficits. No, that's not what I'm saying. But we do need to start taking a proper look at this and understanding, okay, you have safeguarded benefits, but the problem in that is, yes, they're safe, but they're safe to the point that these assets and liabilities are matched. So every single year, an actuarial report has to be completed by the trustees and the actuary to let everyone know what the scheme funding level is at, and if it's not in a good shape, they have to produce a recovery plan. The recovery plan states how they're going to match the assets between the liabilities. So all of that's great, all that is happening, and the UK government is protecting people. They've got these systems in place. However, obviously, I know corporations, I know how they work, I know how profit organizations work. They're shareholder driven, they're dividend driven, they're income, they're profit driven. Over the course of the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, as more and more people live into their late 80s, 90s and past 100, and they're receiving fees from these DB schemes, it's uncertain to be able to say that there will be absolutely no effect on the future value of your pension pots. I've done another video on this, which you can check out here, which is top 10 ways in which they can effectively reduce their deficits, which might not necessarily be beneficial to you. But I would say over the course of time, DB benefits are going to start to be watered down. So for example, around 10 years ago, the UK government allowed schemes to choose between CPI and RPI. Now, if anyone knows these two terms, you'll know there's quite a big difference between the two. The consumer price index obviously protects you far further because it's a higher and it includes more basket of goods, which would actually affect you on a daily basis. Currently, we're in a high inflationary period as well, so it's even more important. So deficits is a big issue. I wouldn't say that when we're writing our reports, scheme deficits is not something we put in our reports in terms of rationale. Even if a lot of clients say, oh, I'm sick of my scheme, they're underfunded, they're this, they're that, I'm scared and I'm worried about them. I wouldn't say that that in itself is a reason to transfer, unless you know something that we don't know and the scheme is about to fall off the edge and go into the PPF. But even a PTS, we would still say, well, even if you stayed inside the scheme, you still have the revaluation and it will go to the pension protection fund. However, I feel like for certain clients, if you have £500,000 or £1 million in a pension pot in the UK, or 100K, whatever it is, if you're able to take a higher level of risk than what's being taken inside your DB scheme, they might be index linking you to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% per year. If you're an adventurous investor and you're seeking 8, 10, 12, 16% growth per annum, then actually you might well still be better off transferring, even if your scheme would be past the pension protection fund. So it's a bit of a grey area, and not one that we like to push clients, say, oh, you need to do this, but you need to be aware of it. And obviously the UK DB schemes are very aware of this. They know what their current liabilities are. And this isn't to say their assets are not growing, because their assets are growing. They have returns, they invest in equities, they invest in gilts, they invest in bonds. They are getting asset return, they're not doing a bad job. But the problem is the liabilities are going up at 2 or 3 times the amount which they can get growth. And the difficulty as well is, say it was passed over to a private equity manager to run the scheme rather than a trustee, and it was just run like a corporation, maybe they could get higher levels of return. But the problem is that everyone's funds are together. They can't say, oh, John Smith is high risk, so he's going to be in the high risk portfolio. Louise Smith is in the low risk category, so we're going to split their assets. No, they can't. It's just tens of thousands of people's money together invested into the same assets. So it doesn't allow them to take a higher level of risk or a lower level of risk, depending upon the client's independent situation. They have to look out for the best practice for everyone involved. So if you, as I said, if you are an adventurous investor, you might not really be getting very good value from your DB scheme, despite the fact that you have lots of safeguarded benefits there. Whilst for somebody who is low risk, and you're saying to me, Dominic, I hate risk, I wouldn't even want my portfolio to go down by 1, 2 or 5%. I would get really worried. You basically shouldn't even be thinking about doing a pension transfer, because the chances are in the markets can go up or down. Sometimes the markets can be up or down 2 or 3% over the course of a day. When we look at the financial crisis, markets are down 20, 25% at the height of the pandemic. Obviously, markets have come back to all-time highs since then, and everyone's had a lot of growth, but volatility is very real. And for clients with a low capacity for loss and a low risk profile, it's not suitable. Low capacity for loss and risk profile are also 2 completely separate things, and clients very often get these confused. A low capacity for loss is someone who doesn't have the capacity to lose money. If you have £5,000 in your bank account and your pension pot is worth £500,000, you don't really have the ability for it to lose any money because you're relying on it. And investment risk or risk profile is to do with how much you would be willing to take in terms of risk. Someone might say to me, Dominic, I want to invest in a load of equities, 80% equity portfolio, which would be adventurous. And I might say to them, your capacity for loss is very, very low, but you have a high risk profile. Slightly different topic, but gives you a bit of an idea. So I would say it doesn't mean you need to transfer. You certainly don't need to be rushing to DBC to get a transfer done because of deficit values, but just be mindful. Keep a look at your scheme, look at the actual reports which come out. They're pretty difficult to read. They're normally on like a page of, you can go back through and read them all though, and while you may not be able to understand, you should be able to Google your scheme to find out the current deficit level. It's something we're very familiar with here at Cameron James. To the nearest sort of 100 million or 50 million, we're basically aware of what the deficit levels it is with inside each scheme. Sometimes we put it in our report, sometimes we don't. So I hope that's helpful, guys. I don't know if any of you have schemes which are in deficits. If any of you have gone to the Pension Protection Fund, please leave a comment below. I'd really love to hear your experience, how smooth it was, how much you got paid, how quick it was, all things like that. Really, really interesting for us. And obviously, if you do want to talk about transferring your pension, or if you've already transferred your final salary pension and you're just not very happy with the performance or you feel something's not quite right, get in touch below. With the Calendly, you book yourself a free initial consultation where myself or one of the advisors will go through your situation in detail. Okay guys, I hope that was valuable on deficits of final salary schemes. Take care with your final salary pensions and look forward to speaking with you on the next video. Thank you, bye-bye.